Hello, my name is Annie Bartlett. I'm a member of the right whale ecology program at the Center for Coastal Studies, and I'm here to talk about um, trends we've observed in surface active group occurrence in Cape Cod Bay and adjacent waters. I ask that the content of this presentation is not shared to social media. For those who are unfamiliar with SAGs, behavior. It is a social behavior between two or more whales that has been documented in all known habitat areas throughout the year. For this project, I used Center for Coastal Studies aerial sightings data to look at all SAGs recorded from January through May, which encompasses our standard season, within a 3 nautical mile buffer of our standardized Cape Cod Bay track lines, pictured here in black. These tracks naturally include a portion of Massachusetts Bay and the eastern shore of Cape Cod, which is where the term adjacent waters comes from. Orange dots represent individual SAG sightings, of which there were 391 documented over this 27-year period. And I would like to acknowledge the fact that SAGs can be both over and under detected depending on the context. Over detected due to them being a very obvious visual behavior at the surface. So if we're flying, if whales are sagging when we're flying by, we're likely not going to miss them. And they can be under detected due to the fact that we're surveying and documenting a relatively small portion of the time that these whales are spending in Cape Cod Bay. So there are certainly more SAGs occurring that we just don't document. That being said, I wanted to take a look at some of the specifics of SAG timing and demographic makeup. Over all years, March has the highest average number of SAGs, followed by February, with April close behind, then January, and finally May. It's important to note that while the highest SAG frequency is observed in March, we typically have the peak number of whales in Cape Cod Bay in April. So it's not just that there are the most SAGs occurring when the most whales are around. Next, I looked at the breakdown of SAG frequency described as SAGs per flight for standardization by both month and year to see if the combined year average represented what was seen in individual years. Generally, there are more SAGs observed in March compared to other months within the year, with some variation. It's interesting to note that in the last 5 years or so, there appears to be a shift to higher SAG frequency in earlier months, January through March, rather than February through April. Then I looked at the breakdown of SAGs by sex. The figure on the left shows the overall count of SAG participants, and the figure on the right shows the proportion of SAG participants. The breakdown by sex has remained relatively consistent over the last 27 years. Generally, 60 to 75% of SAG participants are males, which skews slightly more towards males proportional to the population makeup, which was 56.6 in 2024. Then I looked at the breakdown of SAGs by age class, again showing the count of SAG participants on the left and the proportion of SAG participants on the right. It is interesting to see that pre-2016, juveniles made up a good chunk of SAGs. However, in the last 8 years or so, they've been making up a smaller proportion. I'm going to give a little shout out to my teammate Ryan, who, in looking at arrival and residency of whales in Cape Cod Bay, has found that some juvenile groups tend to show up to the bay later in the season. And these juveniles could be missing out on more of the SAG action if it really is shifting to earlier months, as it has appeared to do in the last few years. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We know that there were no SAGs documented in Cape Cod Bay in 2017, despite it being one of our biggest whale seasons. And then in 2018, there were no calves documented. Of course, it's likely that the SAGs were under detected in 2017, but it is unusual for us to see none. This got us looking at how the SAG frequency compares to the annual calf count. Just looking at the lines next to each other, there appears to be a correlation between the SAG frequency and the frequency of SAGs observed and the number of calves documented the following year. For example, in 2011, there's a lower frequency of SAGs followed by a higher frequency in 2012, which corresponds to a lower calf count in 2012, followed by a higher calf count in 2013. So to look at this a little bit closer, I conducted a cross-correlation factor analysis, which shows that SAG frequency is moderately positively correlated to the calf count at a 1-year lag with a p-value of 0.028. This suggests that if we observe a higher frequency of SAGs in a given season in Cape Cod Bay, we might be able to expect more calves to be born the following year. So why do we care? Recent publications have found that evidence of potential longer gestation in North Atlantic right whales and closely related species based on elevated levels of progesterone. While we're not necessarily claiming that conception is occurring in Cape Cod Bay, these recent findings highlight the importance of gaining a better understanding of habitat use as it pertains to social activity, which may also give insight into foraging strategies. I look forward to diving into this a little bit deeper to see what else we can discover. I'd like to thank my co-authors, the Mass Division of Marine Fisheries, and the North Atlantic Right Whale Consortium for holding these meetings. Thank you.